So we just got finished playing some Battlefront 2 for your channel. Had a fun time. I totally destroyed you in any challenge that we had. You definitely didn't beat me in our challenge to get the heroes first.
I feel like it might be fun to try and come up with some other dumb ways to play Battlefront.
Oh,
I don't know what you could do besides race to see who can be a hero first, though.
I've seen the Droideka races, which are super fun to do.
That does sound really cool.
Load up with some buddies, get Droideka as soon as possible, and then just race across the map. It's a fun one.
That's why they need like private matches, so you can set up like a little course.
If only. That's what I loved about Squadrons, is how the community really pushed forward with that, and they were able to get it added to the game. Sadly, I don't see it happening, but I hope if an eventual Battlefront 3 happens that we will get a really robust game as well as private matches, so we can have that consistency, so we can do stuff like that and try to play around with the game as much as we can.
Welcome to
Uplink. But on the topic of Battlefront 3, got an email from friend of the podcast, Daniel Shilling. He says, "Good afternoon, Sage. Hope you're keeping well. Just listened to the latest podcast with Split Screen. Awesome as always. And I just wanted to share some thoughts I've had on what could happen for Battlefront 3. Assuming EA will make it, and we all know EA are about money, how would you feel about a packet style similar to FIFA, but for Star Wars heroes? Example, you buy packs, but each pack contains different blasters, weapon upgrades, and hero upgrades. I was thinking heroes could have different levels of power depending on which one you pull from a packet, e.g. Luke Skywalker, level 1 is New Hope Luke. Just learning the Force, level 2 is Empire Luke, a little stronger and more skilled with the Force. See where I'm going with this? Now, before you say it, I know this makes the game pay to win. Obviously, that's not what we want as fans, but it is something that could balance the game out. Or have a free version of Battlefront 3, but all DLCs are paid for, and stick with the current way of unlocking items, but make it slightly tougher, like the 5,000 kills or similar to the HUT contracts of Battlefront 2015. There's tons more I could go on about, but I'd be typing forever. Keep well. All the best. Daniel. So I wanted to talk about this on the podcast and go over some thoughts, what we'd like to see the monetary side of Battlefront 3 would look like, and what we'd like to see the upgrades for the game. What are your thoughts?
I don't know much about how FIFA does it, except that it's like problematic. I think I would really be sad if they ever came back to some sort of randomized distribution of items. I think that would hurt everybody.
So I agree. There is the way that the game industry is moving forward, and the way that Battlefront 2 sparked a whole movement in terms of what we as an industry look at in terms of how game developers and game publishers approach the player. And the way that EA did it with Battlefront 2, while not the worst player in the game industry, it was still pretty bad, and it hurt the game. It hurt to this day. While the game is having a resurgence and it's super popular, there are still people out there that won't play the game because of what happened at launch, which is sad. So hopefully,
it's still like a dumb joke you can make. Like if someone goes, "Oh, I hope it's better than the Phantom Menace," like people are still making that joke. People are still making the joke, "Oh, I don't want to have to pay 50,000 hours of gameplay to get Darth Vader." It's like they solved that a long time ago.
Yeah.
But that's the image a lot of people still have of Battlefront in their head.
If a Battlefront 3 gets made, and I think it will be, we're getting a lot of rumors, and while I don't think any of the rumors are necessarily true, the fact that there are rumors starts to lend credence to the game being made. Because when Battlefront 2 was in development, we saw a lot more leaks, and I'm using quotation marks there, rumors and all of that something was happening. And I think if you're EA and you see how much money that the Star Wars license has made you, and how much money the Battlefront license has made you and see how much of a popular franchise it is and how strong of a community it has, you'd be crazy not to capitalize on that. So I definitely think that they're going to make a Battlefront 3. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
Yeah, and also I gotta imagine they're gonna like somehow try a little harder these days or with their next releases, because
they have
other people get to play in that sandbox now with their exclusivity deal coming up or ending soon. So maybe they're gonna be like, oh, we got to make sure people remember EA Star Wars games are the ones you want to buy. You know,
I mean, last episode I had a friend of the podcast, Split Screen, on the podcast, and we were talking about leaks, and we were talking about the conundrum that's going to be Star Wars games, where if you are say someone in college, say someone in school, or you have a 9-to-5, why would you pay money for an EA Star Wars game when other companies are also going to be making Star Wars games and you may only have the budget for one? Why would you pay EA money for Rainbow Six Siege but Star Wars when you could pay Ubisoft money and have the open world Star Wars game, but you know it's going to get developed and get supported for much longer? That's going to be the reality that EA is going to have, and they're going to be like, okay, it's going to make them have to do better.
Yeah. And that's really exciting, because even with like Rainbow Six Siege they'd had a rocky start like Battlefront 2 did, if I recall correctly.
Oh, yes.
And then they like fixed it and now it's super popular. And that exact same thing happened with Battlefront, except with Battlefront, they were like, okay, it's done now. We're going to just stop. When they didn't, they could have kept going, and the player base is still there, the community's still there, but they moved on. So maybe with Battlefront 3, they'll be like, oh, maybe we've got to maintain support for longer before we just dump this for the next thing.
Yeah.
Especially if there are other multiplayer Star Wars games coming out, because obviously the Ubisoft one is a single player open world, so that won't quite require the same level of post-launch support. But
we know it's open world, but it could definitely be online multiplayer.
Yes.
Which, if you look at the games that the development company has made, which is the Division series, which is an open world multiplayer shooter game, I could see that as a game, but in Star Wars, and I would be happy with that. Like I've been thinking about it, and I'm like, do I really want that? Is that something that I would play? And I really thought about it. I was like, that's definitely something I would play.
There are very few games that you couldn't just switch into Star Wars version that I wouldn't be really excited about.
Same. Yeah, if you're looking at like Rainbow Six Siege but Star Wars, I'd buy that in a heartbeat. That's the game that I would love so much.
Like probably some kind of like clone commandos or something.
Yes. It'd be so great. Man. I would love to see that. There's rumors that they're making a more tactical shooter, but it's going to be focused on Inferno Squadron. I'd be down with that too.
That makes a lot of sense.
So, and there was rumors, I think it was like 2019 or 2020, there were rumors that EA canceled a spin-off Battlefront game. And I'm wondering if the rumors and the leaks that we've been getting about that Inferno Squad game, I wonder if that was brought back into production, or is this a new game? So we shall see. I'm super excited about it.
Obviously, you can put a Star Wars character from any story into any other story, but the fact that there were rumors of, or evidence that the cast of Battlefront 2 were working on a new game, you'd think it would be something with like Battlefront in the title, even if it's not Battlefront 3. You just call it Battlefront Inferno Time Reloaded.
Inferno, like even if it's like Star Wars Battlefront, the Inferno Squad missions or something like that, or Star Wars Battlefront Inferno Squad, like those characters were super strong. And while I disagreed with the speed at which they changed sides, I love the characters. I think the characters that they made and the acting for those were super solid. I really enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see them in more stuff. I think I would personally like to see the kind of the time period between the end of the campaign and the start of the DLC, where Aiden and Del are just kind of doing whatever. But it would probably work better for a tactical shooter to have it like be a prequel where they're still Inferno Squad, doing war crimes, that sort of thing.
Did you ever read the Battlefront 2 book that they came out with?
Sure have. Yeah.
That was super fun. That was a super fun mission, and I love those. I love the different looks to the characters and to see them as the Empire, as you know that they're going to be changing sides. It was a really fun read.
Yeah, I liked it because it was like, it didn't. It's been a while since I read it, but it was like, oh, the rebels that they're trying to infiltrate, they're terrible, but for like good reasons. And then they're like, well, we're not like that, but also like we're still evil because what we do. And I don't know. I thought it was good, and it was a good lead up to the book. I thought the book actually might have given you a little bit more insight to the characters than the campaign did.
Yeah.
Just because, like you said, the campaign moves pretty fast with it, how the characters kind of change how they feel about things.
Yeah, but like that's the nature of having a campaign in a video game. Like things are going to have.
Well, especially with the campaign was obviously kind of second saddle to the rest of the game experience, because they're like, well, they got really mad that there wasn't a single player story in the last game, so we'd better make one here. And I wouldn't call it half-assed, but it was certainly like, it was kind of like, okay, we need to give them something so that they can play this for like 8 hours, and then they'll do the multiplayer. It
was a good decision to bring on Motive, because I think Motive is I'm super excited to see what Motive moves forward with. They did a really good job with the campaign in Battlefront, and Squadrons is such a fun, unique experience in the world of gaming and world of Star Wars.
I'm curious what they do next as well. Obviously, Squadrons and the campaign for Battlefront are very different too. So,
yeah, they have a lot of diversity in what they can bring to the table with anything that they make. So, I'm really excited on that front. This episode of Uplink Podcast is brought to you by It's Not a Tiny House Podcast, a podcast all about alternative living and making it happen. Definitely go give them a listen. Link will be in the description of this episode. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. Going back to how FIFA does it, and the other game that comes to mind that's somewhat similar is the Plants vs. Zombies shooters that they made. It has something similar as a packet system where you get packets and seeds to where you can unlock different characters, I believe. That right there is the huge problem that Battlefront 2 faced. Was one, you had to play a crap ton of hours to get Battlefront, or to get Darth Vader and Luke, which were key staples of the game, and you had ability cards, the star cards, that you had to get through randomization and through the loot boxes. And while that was removed at launch, the progression system still leaned on that, and they had to spend a lot of time to fix it.
Oh yeah, if they had that sorted out at launch, we'd have another 6 months, years worth of content that we didn't get because they had to spend that time fixing their progression system. Yeah, so I don't think, and while it is a good correlation to see something like that EA makes and that EA supports and that EA makes a game every year on, to see, hey, this correlation here could bring future support for the game. I don't think, I mean, the people that play FIFA games and the people that play like Battlefront, I think those are usually two different groups. And while there are people that play both, they play them for very, very different reasons, and each has a different draw to it. And I don't think that is a good place to take Star Wars games. Yeah, I feel like they could do it similar to how it is in Battlefront 2, where there's still a premium currency, the crystals, and then the earnable currency, the credits, and just have a store that's more usable and more frequently updated. I have to always just think and compare things to Gears 5, because that's the biggest competitive shooter that I actually play a lot of, and they recently fixed their dumb store, and now they've got the premium currency and then the earnable currency, and then their store updates every week with like a big backlog of stuff you can browse through, and you can use your earnable or premium currency on all of it. Everything in the store you could buy with the earnable currency, but there's also the premium currency, so if you don't want to like grind it out, or and I think every week the new items in the store are only for premium currency, and then a week later they go earnable. You can spend the earnable currency on it. So if you really want to be the guy who's got it right away, and I think that seems to work. And they do cycle things in and out of the store, so there's a little bit of kind of, you know, it's not as bad as it used to be where buy it now or you'll miss it. But I think having things, giving players those options, because some people have a lot of time to play and they can get the earnable stuff. Some people can't afford the premium stuff. I don't ever buy the premium currency on games, except for sometimes.
Yeah.
So I guess I think it's a system that works. It's nice to have things that you can see, like, oh, I could just, you know, maybe I'll treat myself and spend $10 on this game, especially. It was easy with Gears 5 because I, you know, get it through Game Pass. I'm like, I technically didn't even buy this game, so if I spend $10 on this game, it's not a big deal, and I appreciate them, and I'd like to,
support the continuation.
Right.
I think the key thing that you hit on there, no matter which way that they do it, because there are many different avenues, the key thing would be a consistently updated store. I think the best way, in my personal opinion, and the thing that I draw the most interaction from, is the way Apex does it. Apex is one of the top performers for EA. They bring it up in every single earnings call meeting. It's Apex and Sims. Both of those things. Well, technically it's Apex, Sims, and then the crap ton of sports games that they have. But sure. Apex is a huge example of this, where it was a spin-off title from Respawn that was just an internal thing that they really enjoyed playing. So they're like, hey, let's release this. And it's been continuing update. They've got the seasons, and they've got the Battle Pass. The Battle Pass is a huge thing for multiplayer shooters. It's something that everyone can get behind. It doesn't involve anything on the gameplay, and I think that's the key thing. That is the key problem. You cannot have something that you buy that affects the gameplay.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And that I think those are the Gears has kind of a similar battle pass system to Apex that just goes with the season, except it's totally free.
Okay.
Like for everybody. Like if you pay real money to get like this boost, you can like progress through it more quickly, but it's totally free. And I think that's kind of neat. And it mostly rewards you with like premium and earnable currency and then some cosmetics. But on the storefront, I think the store thing is such a big deal, because if you're updating it weekly, then your players, even if they aren't playing as much as they used to, they might still come and be like, oh, I got to check the store this week because there's always something new, and I don't want to... it's fun to see what's new.
And it's not feasible. With Battlefront 2, they wanted to have new content come out each week. And that was the main draw. And then the whole progression system thing happened. And then seasons shifted in terms of what the scope was. But if you have... The great thing with that, like you said, is like if they have a store update every week, you know what people are going to do? They're going to keep on coming every week. And whether or not you have content that week, you're going to have new skins that they could have. And like Star Wars has such a huge wealth of skins. And like, while it's not necessarily canon that we see of, you can definitely imagine some person on Tatooine is going to go over there and paint their blaster. Or like you can have blaster skins. Like that's super fun. Something that everyone loves. I could see there
being because that is a kind of a staple of most shooters, and I could see them having they'd probably be more subtle than a lot of other games.
Yeah, or just charms.
Right, and I think there'd definitely be things they could do that would get approved by Lucasfilm, where they'd be like, yeah, okay, you can have the little gonk droid hanging off your blaster.
That's what I was thinking.
Look what they've done with Squadrons. Squadrons is obviously, with the cosmetics in Squadrons, there's a lot of things that you would never see happen in the movie, but it still got approved, and it's fun to have the little pieces of flair. Something like that would probably work really well.
If you're looking at it from a canon aspect, why would some random starship fighter from the Republic or the Empire have the Mandalorian ship, which is a super old ship? Why would that be hanging in their cockpit? So they have that precedent of that. And I think one of the things that they hid behind in Battlefront 2015 was the fact that everything had to be super canon. It had to be super duper canon. There would be no like prequel era characters or anything like that, because their focus was on the original trilogy, and that character wasn't in the original trilogy, so we can't bring it. But I hope as we move forward with video games, we start seeing more of those fun, stupid ideas for games. Like, I would love to see a heroes versus villains game, and like, no way you're gonna have a canon battle between like Rey and Anakin, but it's super fun and the gameplay works.
Yeah, you could, if it was the whole game, that would be way more interesting, because obviously Battlefront 2's Hero versus Villains, they're all designed and balanced to also fit in this huge ground combat game. If that was the whole game, they could each have way more. I'm thinking of the Marvel Avengers game now, where each character plays so differently, and has so many unique moves and animations that would be very cool. And I know that would appeal to a lot of people, because that Heroes versus Villains mode is a popular mode on Battlefront. And you could bring back because I think they took it out at some point in Battlefront 2, but the announcer, where it was just the tactical droid who was just like kind of smack talking the characters.
I believe they brought it back because it was such a fun thing. They got rid of it for a bit, and then they brought it back, and on some maps I hear it, and then on the other maps I don't. So I'm not sure what actually triggers it. So yeah, I'm super hopeful for the future, and like we were talking about earlier, the fact that other game developers can make Star Wars games is going to be so much better for us. And instead of one company where they've got the exclusivity, where if they don't release a Star Wars game, it's no big deal because they have the exclusive license. And now it's like, well, if we really want to take advantage of this and make a really good game, we have to do that to keep that relationship. And this was the best situation. Like, I never wanted another company to get exclusivity. I wanted it to be opened up. So if you are a really cool developer, you can make a Star Wars game.
Right? Yeah, and I want weird Star Wars games. Make like Stardew Valley, but Star Wars. Or
dude.
Just get out there with it. I mean, it doesn't need everyone to be some kind of shooter or an action adventure or an RPG.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Give me a game where you just play as like a loth cat and you run around and do stuff. Just make
exactly. I would love to see a gonk droid game where you just play around as a gonk droid and you can't really do anything, but you're playing through the key moments of Star Wars.
Oh man!
But as a gonk droid. You know what
that is? I think I feel like, I don't know if they're affectionately or mockingly called walking simulators, but that is kind of a genre now, like What Remains of Edith Finch, or
yes.
There's a lot of games now where you kind of are just walking through the game and experiencing a story and getting, interacting, like opening a door here or doing the thing there. But for the most part, it's more passive, and they're still really popular because they tell good stories in ways that you can't tell in other mediums. Do that, but with a gonk droid.
Yes. What's everyone's gone to the gonk droid rapture.
It turns out the cult of the power droids was the one true religion in the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah, the gonk droids are actually the Force, and that's why they're all around.
If you look at midichlorians real closely under a microscope, it's just gonk droids.
It's the astronaut meme. It's always been it's gonk droids. Always has been.
Gonk.
Yeah, so I think going forward and with more people doing Star Wars games, I hope we get to see more of those unique experiences. And I mean, we start to see that with the Star Wars show, so hopefully that comes to the video games too.
Yeah. And it'd be, I don't know, yeah, like give me a new racing game. It doesn't even have to be pod racer. It can be swoop bikes or like speeders, or I don't know. There's so many options, and it's like there's so many things that could happen that are things that EA would never have done because they tend to play it safe. And you know, there's already so many games that they tried that were like a little bit out there that got canceled, like that Operation Ragtag or whatever.
Yeah,
it was.
don't remind me. Yeah, from what I've heard is EA likes to, they say they're going to release a Star Wars game at this year, and if the game that they were planning on releasing then doesn't happen, they're going to cancel it and put something else in the pipeline or move production to something else. So it's an interesting way to do it. More on we need a game at this point rather than we just need a game.
Yeah, and we know, I guess the only two games we know for a fact are coming are that game from Ubisoft, which we really don't know anything about, and then Fallen Order 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are the only two confirmed games, although I expect we'll get a lot of new announcements this year. Maybe not in the next month or two, but I feel like things are gonna start popping up like crazy before this year's over, at least as far as announcements go.
Yeah, I hope that EA Play is a wealth of Star Wars news, and we get at least logo reveals. Like that's all we need. We just need that, hey,
right.
We're making a Star Wars game.
I remember when they announced Fallen Order, it was the weirdest thing because it was just that dude in the audience, the guy from Respawn, and he's like...
Dude, that was the weirdest thing ever. I forgot
like, oh yeah, our game's called Fallen Order, and it's got a lightsaber in it or something like that. And they were like, oh, got anything else to tell us? Nope, that's it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, he seemed
not even like
so not prepared.
I
I had totally forgotten about that. That's crazy.
Not to derail things, but I've been thinking about Fallen Order 2 mostly because, like a lot of games, it has the problem of, okay, you spend the first game starting with no powers and ending with lots of powers. The sequel, now, do you start the game where you left off, or do you somehow nerf your main character again so you progress again? But what if you didn't even bother and you played as Marin the whole game, and then you work on her power set?
I mean, I've heard that they're going to continue with Cal, and it's going to be a continuation of the first story.
Yeah, that'd be my expectation.
But like if they say Cal's bonked his head and he lost all of his memories, I'm gonna be like, what? No, I think so.
That's such a struggle with lots of games.
Yeah,
you know, like Mass Effect 2 literally had to just kill Commander Shepard to let you start over.
Yeah. So I hope that they continue with that character and they continue with the strengths and they find other ways to push forward the gameplay. Because if they just start over, that's gonna be a bit of a cop out,
right?
But I'm super pumped about that game. Like the first one was so good and so much of a hidden success that I'm super excited to see how they push forward with the game.
Yeah, I mean they can only build on what was already a great game that had some. It could have used a little bit more polish. So now that they kind of did that, I'm expecting the same greatness, but like probably with some new tricks that are going to surprise people.
It's going to be good. Anyway, dude, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and the fun on Battlefront.
Yeah, that was great. That'll be up on the Jodocast YouTube channel sometime. I don't know when that'll... after I finish editing it, it'll be one of these Mondays probably.
Sounds good. I'll put links to your stuff in the description of this episode. Definitely go check it out and keep an eye out for that video. That's all for this episode of Uplink Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/Uplink Podcast, to get exclusive content as well as access to Uplink Plus, a monthly exclusive podcast talking all things wider world of gaming, Star Wars, and more. Definitely come check this out and help us support the show. A great free way to support the show is by leaving us a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you can leave a review of the podcast, it helps us out a ton and helps new listeners find the show. You can follow us on Twitter at Uplink Podcast as well as on Instagram, Uplink Podcast as well. Twitter is a great way to keep up to date on all things Star Wars gaming as well as all things on the show. Also, definitely check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/the Star Wars Battlefront podcast. We stream every Saturday at, usually it's around 12 p.m. MST. We play Star Wars games, we play Among Us, we play all kinds of fun stuff, and it is a great time. Also, stay tuned for some more content coming to our YouTube channel as we are ramping things up for 2021. Also, if you love video games, Star Wars, plants, and pizza, definitely check us out on Discord. Link will be in the description. Come join our awesome community. You can listen to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. Wherever you find podcasts, you can find this show. As always, thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.